Hello, I'm Lampanopoulos and welcome to the Random Access Show. Today we will be talking about the best operating system for you to be running on your computer. This is going to be a very exciting episode, and of course, as always, we're going to be speaking about the latest in tech news. So sit tight and enjoy. My name's Lampanopoulos and you're tuned into the Random Access Show. Hello and welcome to the Random Access Show. I'm Leon Panopoulos, and today's episode is all about which operating system you should be running on your computer. Now, I know that everyone has different opinions about this, so it is going to be a great topic and it's going to be a great debate. And throughout the episode, I am going to encourage you to make sure to leave a comment on which operating system you think is the best to run on your computer. So just remember to do that. Now, today, like I said, which operating system should you be running? The reason I say this is because this is a big debate on the internet. Of course, a lot of people are talking about, Mac OS versus Windows, or Windows versus Linux, or whatever it may be. So, a lot of people, everyone's divided. And so this topic is going to be very interesting. So, first of all, let's start with Windows and its pros and cons. So, in this episode, I'll be comparing Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. And, so I'll start off with Windows and its pros and its cons. So, obviously a big pro with Windows, the biggest one probably, is its app compatibility. Basically, any app you download nowadays is compatible with Windows. Whether that be a word processing software like Microsoft Office and Microsoft Word, or, audio or video editing software such as Adobe Audition, which I'm using right now to edit and record this episode. Each software usually has a version for Windows. And the reason this is because it has the highest market share on consumer computers out of all three of the operating systems we're comparing today. And that all really comes down to advertising and how long Windows has been around for. Windows has been around for a really, really long time. And what this means is that people trust it. It's stable. It's been around for this long. Why hasn't it? If it's been around for this long, if there was an issue with it, people would have stopped using it, and that is true. So that's why people use Windows. It's been around for a long time, and that's hence apps are compatible with Windows because a lot of people are using Windows, and because it's been around for a long time. It's also easier to program for. So, whereas on Mac OS, if you're going to program an app, you have to have a MacBook. It's not, in order for you to be able to program in Swift, because Xcode, which is what you use to program in Swift, is only available for MacBooks. So that's something that a lot of app developers really enjoy doing, because what it means is that they can easily just push something through, and they could have a Mac and they can code an app for Windows, and that's the thing. Windows has the high app compatibility, which means a lot of people are going to use it, because my friend who I mentioned last episode, who just bought a M2 MacBook, has come to me and he said, I've realized that not a lot of programs are compatible with my MacBook. There's really no point in spending $2,500 on a MacBook when you can't even download, a lot of really vital software on it. So that's the first thing. Second thing it's like I said, it's long standing. It's been around for a long time, and it's stable. Everyone's had their problems with Windows Update and their experiences with that. And leave those in the comments as well. Tell me what your bad experiences with Windows Update have been. But everyone's had good experience with it as well. In all the time I've been using a Windows computer, I haven't been hacked. I haven't had any security issues, no security flaws that I've noticed, and it's really been stable. And I've noticed that. And if you compare that to, even Mac OS is stable, but Windows just has that extra edge that makes it Windows. It's that stability that you can trust that Windows is not going to do you any wrong, or at least not going to do you any wrong in the security side. And that is really important to a lot of users. Another thing is, people that have been using Windows for a very long time are usually and typically not going to go away from Windows. If you've been using an operating system for a very long time, even on a phone, we've seen that you're not going to change from Android to iOS after 15 years using Android. Because you get used to it. You get to know it, and then it's like learning a new language all over again. You're learning a new operating system, and it's not something you want to do when you're, using your computer every day. So that's that. Now, if we talk about the cons of Windows, because Windows does have cons, and one of them is its pricing. Everybody knows Windows costs a lot. $120 for a Windows license. You can find it for $60. You can find it for a bit cheaper. But $120, you're not going to pay. You kind of have to pay that. But the fact that you have to pay that much is just unbelievable. And Windows 11 Home is $139. $139 for the basic version of Windows, and that's just in order for you to be able to run your computer. And look, you can always go out and get another operating system, but like I just mentioned, 99% of people are not going to do that. If you want Windows 11 Pro, that's $199. That is a massive hole in your pocket. $199 for Windows. And that is one of its longest running issues. It's one of its biggest issues, and it's the one that people complain about the most, I'd say. And it's just because it's outrageous. Having to pay that much for an operating system. But people still do. People still pay that much for Windows 11 or Windows 10 because they have nothing. What else are they going to use? What else are they going to go to? If you have a PC, you can't install Mac OS, and you're not going to go install Linux. That's really unlikely. So it's just and when Microsoft is making heaps of money off this, they're not doing much, and they're just sitting back making heaps of money from Windows. So that's a really big thing, yeah. And the second con that I've got here is tracking. Windows has so much tracking, so much telemetry, so much location tracking, internet tracking. They phone home all the time. And the fact is, you can go into Reddit and delete all this telemetry, but unless you're technically capable of that, you're not going to do that, and it will restrict you from using some features. For example, Windows Search, if you delete telemetry, you can't use Windows Search anymore. And that's a feature I honestly use heaps, and I know a lot of people complain about Windows Search, but it is the most convenient search for me when I just need to search up something really quickly. I don't ever click onto the links. I just look at the snippets that it shows, but it's a really convenient feature, and I know a lot of people use it. And by getting rid of telemetry, but for the sacrifice of Windows search and more features, I wouldn't do that, because convenience right now overrules, Microsoft knowing that I searched up how to make pho or how to make noodles, So it's just, it has too much tracking, but no one's going to do anything about that. Microsoft's still going to get their data, still going to get their money. Out of the 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, 1,000 people that do go into Regedit and get rid of all the telemetry, that's nothing, And Microsoft knows way more about you than you think they do, because you're using Windows every day, and everything you do gets sent straight to Microsoft, all that data. If you go into settings and click on those little checkboxes that say, yes, I do want to send personalized usage data, the way they say that in the settings is just so persuasive. It's like, yes, I do want to help you improve Windows 11, because that means I get a better Windows experience. It does, but it also means that you lose your data and you lose your privacy. So those are Windows pros and cons. Next up, however, is Mac OS, and I think this one is a bit of a mixed bag. I don't like MacBooks. You guys all know that. But Mac OS is honestly a beautiful looking operating system. Its UI is absolutely awesome. It's great. But a MacBook itself, I don't want to touch one. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people agree with. They love Mac OS, they love whatever, the look of it, the features of it, but they don't love the fact that it's only on a Mac. Mac users, however, will often vouch for Apple and say, well, it's good that it's a closed ecosystem, because it means it's more stable, more secure, more tightly knit, meaning Apple has less computers to deal with for security and stability. So that's a bit of a mixed bag. And if you're an Apple user, Mac OS is your home turf. But for someone who wants to use Mac OS on a PC, I'm not going to go out and buy a completely new PC, completely new laptop, so I can use an operating system. And that kind of is similar to Windows 11's Windows's pricing, which is $140, $200. Mac OS makes up for that in the fact that you have to buy a whole new computer to use that operating system. So there would be people at home who have, a Windows laptop, a Mac laptop, and a desktop running Windows, so just so that they can use their Mac OS. And I think that is not, it's not Apple's best decision, but it is for them as a corporate, because it means that they have less computers to deal with, it's more secure, it's more stable, and they're technically making more money. And so, yeah, I don't know what to think about the closed ecosystem. App compatibility, on the other hand, that's easy. Not good. Mac OS has way less apps than Windows does. And like I was mentioning with my friend who has the new M2 MacBook, who's just realized that Mac OS doesn't really have many apps that you can download. Well, yeah, but it's also got exclusive apps like Final Cut Pro, which a lot of people have bought a MacBook just for that. Video editors will do that, or audio editors. And so, but Mac OS, other than that, I can't think of anything that is exclusive to Mac that Windows doesn't have or doesn't have an alternative to. And so Mac users are missing out on the apps. For example, if you're a Mac user, you can't use a lot of Adobe apps. You can't use, well, there's a lot of apps you can't use, to be honest with you. But I know that Mac users just are missing out. And for example, a lot of Steam games, especially gamers, you cannot use a MacBook. And Macs do not have the high gaming app compatibility, because it means for game developers redesigning their entire app for someone who doesn't even have a majority of the market share. And and most gamers are on a PC, so it is not worth for game developers to redevelop the entire game and port it to Mac. But on the other hand, if you're buying a Mac, you're probably not a gamer anyway. But yeah, I do know that there are a few gamers who do game on Mac. Just not a lot. And so game developers really don't have a reason to port to Mac. And so, look, I mean, I get there are quite a few games that you can download on your Mac, but just nowhere near as many as you can download on Windows. But one big yes for Mac is that it's based on Linux, meaning you can use all the bash commands, you can use a lot of Linux features, and it's just, it's better. I like the fact that it is based on Linux, because it means you do have access to all those features that Linux does give you. But yeah, a lot of people won't find that useful anyway. Now let's talk about Linux, which is actually my favorite out of all of these three, because it's open source. And for those of you who don't know what open source software is, it's basically software where the public can see the code and they can edit it. And it may sound, scary, like there's vulnerabilities, but it's not. It means that if someone tries to put a vulnerability into it, someone else is going to be on it straight away. And you can learn more about the open source community all over the internet. But Linux is one of the biggest open source projects there are. And it is my favorite, probably, of all of them. Wikipedia, for example, is open source, just as an example. But yeah, so Linux is open source, which makes it my favorite operating system. It is, what that also means is most Linux operating systems, most Linux distros are free. Now, Linux is not just one OS. Linux is the kernel, the basis of the OS. And there are multiple distros within that group of operating systems. So what this means is, for example, Ubuntu, which is probably the most popular and most famous distro, is a Linux operating system. Linux, you cannot go online to a website and just download Linux, though you can go online to a website, ubuntu.com, and download Ubuntu. Or if you want to download Manjaro, which is another popular operating system, you can go to manjaro.org and download that. And what this means is you have so much choice in the operating system you choose. So, for example, there's one operating system called Elementary OS, which is based off Linux, which is it looks exactly like Mac. It's reverse engineered to look exactly like Mac OS, and it's made for Mac users coming to Linux. And so it gives you this friendly, warm, comforting feel that, well, I know this operating system. This is very similar to the operating system I was using before. And this is just one of your many choices. And in these operating systems, you have the core functionality of Linux as a whole. And what you also get is a lot of different operating systems based on other operating systems. For example, to help explain this, Ubuntu is based off Debian, and Debian is just a sole Linux distribution, but there are many different Linux distributions based off Debian. Many based off Ubuntu, for example, Pop! OS or Linux Mint, and there are many different operating systems based off others, like Arch Linux, which is another one, kind of like Debian in the hierarchy. And what this means is, since Ubuntu is based off Debian, Ubuntu gets all the functionality and all the app compatibility that Debian has, plus more. And this is really, really cool. Another thing I really like about Linux is it's highly customizable. No matter which distro you choose, it's always going to be really, really, really customizable. And what this means is, it's a lot of Linux OSs, you can go in and edit a text file or a configuration file to change the keys on your keyboard and what they do. For example, I can go into this file and change the functionality of the L key. And I can say, if I click on the L key, it doesn't give me an L, it gives me an A. And so you can basically create your own keyboard layout. And this is called key maps. And it's really customizable. You can literally change the entire UI with these things called desktop environments. And so I'm not going to go into the whole functionality of Linux right now today. I might do another episode on that actually. But it is a really, really customizable core operating system. And most of the distros are free as well, so that's a big tick. And most of these operating systems, being open source, are not really based or created by one massive corporate like Windows is. These are like, for example, the only example I can think of that is Ubuntu, which is from Canonical. So what this means though is that there is little to no tracking. And when I say no tracking, I mean, no tracking except the tracking that is required for the core functionality of an operating system. And so this is really good for your privacy. App compatibility on Linux is not the best though. Really not that good. And in fact, it's why I have not gotten around to installing Linux on any of my devices, except for my Raspberry Pi, of course. Because you think Mac OS's app compatibility is bad? Linux is really, really, really horrible. You can't download many apps at all that you would normally download. So you have to find alternatives to things like Microsoft Office, or there's a lot of apps aren't available. For example, Discord is available though, VLC is available, but here if I go, the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite is not available. A lot of these popular apps that you're always using are not available on Linux, and it's even worse for gamers, which I really hate to say, because Linux is such a good core operating system that it's just really, really hard to use it when you can't download any of the apps you're used to, which is why a lot of people aren't using Linux. That's one of its biggest problems. Finally, its ease of use is not always the best, depending on the distro though. So for some distros, its ease of use, you can easily use it. You can go, settings are very familiar. Others, not the easiest to use. And a good YouTube series that you can check out is to showcase the functionality and the features of Linux and whether you should use Linux or not is Linus Tech Tips Linux Daily Driver Challenge, and I highly recommend you go check that out because it really goes in depth the functionalities of Linux. And if you know Linus Tech Tips, it's actually really cool. And he actually goes in and uses Linux for as his daily driver. So it's really cool, and I highly recommend you go check that out. And now it's time for the quick stuff. And we've got 3 news articles today. First headline is dozens of Whole Foods stores will soon let you pay with a scan of your palm. You'll be able to walk into Whole Foods and simply scan your palm and done, you've paid. This is just really scary to me. I'm not 100% sure how it will work, but I just thought I'd let you guys know. Now, I don't know if there's a Whole Foods in Australia, but this is revolutionary. This is the first I've seen of its kind, and that I hope it doesn't continue. I'm not an advocate for human implants. So yeah, but if that's if that seems interesting to you, I mean, I guess that's something you could go to Whole Foods and just enjoy paying by scanning your palm. Samsung has launched its One UI 5 beta based on Android 13, and so if you have a Samsung phone, go check that out. See if your phone is compatible. I'm not really into Samsung's One UI, to be honest with you. It doesn't interest me. It doesn't look the best either. I think they need to work on that. Other than that, though, it doesn't look. It's only available for the S22 series, but One UI just doesn't look. It doesn't look very good. I prefer Google's stock Android because it looks good. It looks really good. And also One UI would not work on a non-Samsung phone, in my opinion. That's my opinion. And Tubi, which is Fox's ad-supported free streaming service, is now launching in 5 Latin American countries. Those are Costa Rica, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Panama. And if you're listening from there, hooray, you've got Tubi. It's actually got some pretty good shows on there. I've used it once on holidays because there was a TV there that used Tubi. But yeah, actually that would be cool if someone was listening from Costa Rica or Ecuador or Guatemala or Panama. But anyway, I don't think so. And that's the end of the show. That's the end from me. Thank you very much for listening to the Random Access Show. If you enjoyed, make sure to share with your friends and your family. I'm Olympus. This was the Random Access Show. I'll see you next time.